documentary everyone should see. Everyone. Even Jesus. I'm I watched well, okay, so I looked up 6 Million Lies. Of course you're not going to find it on YouTube. And it's actually an old movie, an older, maybe in the 90s or something like that. But I was surprised because I found another one on BitChute or Bit, I don't know how to say it, but a different version, a more modern version, I guess. It was posted 11 months ago by Dan the Man or something like that. And it was like a redone version of it. But it's, that the whole narrative that 6 million Jays died in the Holocaust is provably bullshit. Like it's provable. You can. Oh shit. Okie dokie. You're all right. Well, that was interesting. All right. Um. Yeah. So 6 Million Lies is this. It's a breakdown of. It shows you how for decades prior to the Holocaust narrative being pushed on us, they were pushing the 6 million number. 6 million Jays exterminated. 6 million Jays are facing, and it actually, the one I saw today did a really good job of showing how, I mean, it's all just lies. But what's interesting is that, there's not a written history that dates back all these years. The historical narrative for the Jays was written much later than it happened because forever their history was considered an oral history. They didn't supposedly write anything down, which is which is how they cover up the fact that their history doesn't exist in the chronological history that we have. But the number 6 million literally was used in story after story after story. There are all sorts of newspapers from I think the earliest was like 1918 or some shit like that, where they talk about 6 million Jays are in danger, 6 million Jays are going to lose their lives. Like it's really interesting. I mean, even from a you're a believer perspective, right? If you think I'm crazy and you believe the narrative you're told to believe, you should still think it's interesting. I mean, I would. It's why I am the way I am. Because even the stuff that I believe, I then scrutinize just to make sure, just to see, you know, just to not be able to be thrown a curveball by some random, dumbass troll, whatever it may be. But that's how they operate. They operate through deception. They operate through, you know, trickery and it's it's pretty well documented. Which can't be the same, can't be said for like the claim of 6 million being killed. That there's not a lot of documentation, if any, to prove that anything even close to that happened. And what's even crazier is the whole Stalin narrative, where the Bolshevik Jays, killed 10 to 20 million, or was it 12 to 20 million Christians, supposedly. And it's much more well documented than the much, the more popular one. And it happened at around the same time. Let's look it up. Let's take a dive into that. So Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin. Let's see what Joseph Stalin what they say about Joseph Stalin. Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin, born Dzhugaveli, I don't know. Those names are so. Dzhugashvili. Digashvili, or something like that. Zugashvili, I don't know. Born December 18th or December 6th. It's got two dates. 1878, died March 5th, 1953. Was a Soviet politician and revolutionary who led the Soviet Union from 1924 until his death in 1953. He held power as General Secretary of the Communist Party. General Secretary. That's weird. Why would you call yourself the General Secretary? From 1922 to 1952. And as chairman of the Council of Ministers from 1941 until his death. He initially governed as part of a collective leadership, but consolidated power to become an absolute dictator by the 1930s. Stalin codified the party's official interpretation of Marxism as Marxism-Leninism, while the totalitarian political system he created known as Stalinism. While the totalitarian political system he created is known as Stalinism. Let's look at this Marxism-Leninism. Marxism-Leninism is the communist ideology that became the largest faction of the communist movement in the world in the years following the October Revolution. It was the predominant ideology of most communist governments throughout the 20th century. It was developed in the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics, the USSR, by Joseph Stalin, and drew on elements of Bolshevism, Leninism, and Marxism. It was the state ideology of the Soviet Union, Soviet satellite states in the Eastern Bloc, and various countries in the non-aligned movement and Third World during the Cold War, as well as the Communist International after Bolshevization. Today, Marxism-Leninism is the de jure ideology of the ruling parties of China, Cuba, Laos, and Vietnam, all one-party socialist republics, as well as many other communist parties. The state ideology of North Korea is derived from Marxism-Leninism, although its evolution is disputed. Marxist-Leninist states are commonly referred to as communist states by Western academics. Marxism-Leninism was developed from Bolshevism by Joseph Stalin in the 1920s based on his understanding and synthesis of classical Marxism and Leninism. Marxism-Leninism, we'll just call it ML. ML holds that a two-stage communist revolution is needed to replace capitalism. A vanguard party, organized through democratic centralism, would seize power on behalf of the proletariat and establish a one-party socialist state called the dictatorship of the proletariat. The state would control the means of production, suppress opposition, counter revolution, and the bourgeois, I don't know what that word is, and promote the Soviet collectivism to pave the way for an eventual communist society that would be classless and stateless. After the death of Vladimir Lenin in 1924, let's break into Lenin. Morning, Matt. Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, April 22nd or April 10th. What is OS? What is this OS? Old style and new style dates. Old style and new style indicate dating systems before and after a calendar change, respectively. Usually they refer to change from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar as enacted in various European countries between 1582 and 1923. Okay. Differences between the need to correct the calendar arose from the realization that the correct figure for the number of days in a year is not 365.25 as assumed by the Julian calendar, but slightly less, 365.242. Really? That's the reason that the calendar was changed? I have a phone call for a job shortly. When it's done, I should be quick. I should be been busy at the wrong times trying to watch streams as recently. Appreciate it. But you do what you need to do to make sure your life is good. Fuck my feed. The consequence. I mean, so in as early as in England, Wales, Ireland, and Britain's American colonies, there were two calendar changes, both in 1752. Gee, that's weird. Yeah. Barb is a piece of shit. Barb is a pedophile. Stay away from Barb. The first adjusted the start of the new year from March 25th, Lady Day, the Feast of the Annunciation, to January 1st, a change which Scotland had made in 1600. The second discarded the Julian calendar in favor of the Gregorian calendar, skipping 11 days in the month of September to do so. What the fuck were those days in September? To accommodate the two calendar changes, writers used dual dating to identify a given day by giving its date according to both styles of dating. For countries such as Russia, where no start of the year adjustment took place, OS and NS simply indicate the Julian and Gregorian dating systems respectively. I mean, this is fucking stupid. The need to correct the calendar arose from the realization that the correct figure for the number of days in a year is not 365.25, 365 days, 6 hours, as assumed by the Julian calendar, but slightly less, 365.242. That's not even something you can notice. We're talking about 0.008 difference. It's a 8/100ths of a difference. Like, how would you even know that? How would you even no, you know what? It's actually like 0.008 less than what you said it is. How would you even begin to quantify that, to validate that? That's just fucking stupid. The Julian calendar, therefore, has too many leap years. The consequence was that the bias for the calculation of the date of Easter, as decided in the 4th century, had drifted from reality. The Gregorian calendar reform also dealt with the accumulated difference between these figures. Between the years 325 and 1582 by skipping 10 days to set the ecclesiastical date of the equinox to be March 21st, the median date of its occurrence at the time of the First Council of Nicaea, in 325. I mean, this is fucking stupid. I had no idea it was this stupid. Countries that adopted the Gregorian calendar after 1699 needed to skip an additional day for each subsequent new century that the Julian calendar had added since then. When the British Empire did so in 1752, the gap had grown to 11 days. When Russia did so as its civil calendar in 1918, 13 days needed to be skipped. 13 days in what? 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 Britain and its colonies or possessions. In the Kingdom of Great Britain and its possessions, the calendar, New Style Act of 1750, introduced two concurrent changes to the calendar. The first, which applied to England, Wales, Ireland, and the British colonies, changed the start of the year from March 25th to January 25th, with effect from the day after the 31st of December 1751. Oh, Angela, seriously. Jesus. Scotland had already made this aspect of the changes on January 1st, 1600. The second, in effect, adopted the Gregorian style or calendar in place of the Julian calendar. Thus, New Style can refer to the start of the year adjustment to the adoption of the Gregorian calendar, or a combination of the two. It was through their use of the Calendar Act of 1750 that the notations Old Style and New Style came into common usage. This is just. When recording British history, it is usual to quote the date as originally recorded at the time of the event, but with the year number adjusted to start on January 1st. The latter adjustment may be needed because the start of the civil calendar year had not always been January 1st and was altered at different times in different countries. So to think that we would have any sort of accurate historical account is literally just foolish. I mean, it's like impossible. How could you, with certain countries, I mean, it's fucking stupid. The civil year began on March 25th, Lady Day. So, for example, the execution of Charles I was recorded at the time in Parliament as happening on January 30th, 1648, Old Style. In newer English language text, the date is usually shown as January 30th, 1649, New Style. That's a whole year. The corresponding date in the Gregorian calendar is the 9th of February, 1649, the date by which his contemporaries in some parts of continental Europe would have recorded his execution. I mean, this is like when you see this stuff, this explains, oh well, you know, that's why some of the things don't in history don't line up because they were on different dates. And like this is just some bullshit to explain stuff, but it's confusing and stupid. The OS New-S designation is particularly relevant for dates which fall between the start of the historical year, January 1st, and the legal start date, where different. This was March 25th in England, Wales, Ireland, and the colonies until 1752 and until 1600 in Scotland. In Britain, January 1st was celebrated as the New Year festival from as early as the 13th century, despite the recorded civil year not incrementing until March 25th. But the year starting 25th of March was called the civil or legal year, although the phrase old style was more commonly used. To reduce misunderstandings about the date, it was normal, even in semi-official documents such as parish registers, to place a statutory New Year heading after 24th of March, for example, 1661, and another heading from the end of the following December, 1661 or 62, a form of dual dating to indicate that the following 12 weeks or so, the year was 1611 Old Style, but 1662 New Style. Some more modern sources, often more academic ones, e.g. the History of Parliament, also use the 1661-62 style period between January 1st and March 24th for years before the introduction of the New Style calendar in England. This is fucking goofy. In Russia, the Gregorian calendar was implemented in Russia on February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1918, by dropping the Julian dates of the 1st through the 13th of February 1918, pursuant to a Sovnakrum decree signed January 24th, 1918, by Vladimir Lenin. The decree required that the Julian date was to be written in parentheses after the Gregorian date until July 1918. It is common in English language publications to use the familiar Old Style or New Style terms to discuss events and personalities in other countries, especially with reference to the Russian Empire and the very beginning of Soviet Russia. For example, in the article, The October-November Revolution, the Encyclopedia Britannica uses the format of October 25th, November 7th New Style to describe the date of the start of the revolution. That is fucking stupid. I still want to know how they figured it out. How did they go well, this isn't right. The Latin equivalents, which are used in many languages, are on one hand stili vertes, veteris, genitive, or stilo verte, ablative, abbreviated STV, and meaning of, in, Old Style, and the other stili novi or stilo novo, abbreviated STN, and meaning of, in, New Style. The Latin abbreviations may be capitalized differently by different users, e.g. blah, blah, blah. There are no equivalents for these terms in other languages as well, such as German, A period, ST period, alter stili for OS. Wow, this is dumb. Transportation of historical events and possible date conflicts. Thomas Jefferson's tombstone, written below the epitaph, is born April 2nd, 1943, OS, died July 21st, 1826. You know, good old Tommy J's tombstone. Because why wouldn't Thomas Jefferson have an obelisk for a tombstone? Totally makes sense. Usually, the mapping of new style dates onto old style dates with the start of the year adjustment works well with little confusion for events before the introduction of the Gregorian calendar. For example, the Battle of Agincourt is well known to have been fought on October 25th, 1415, which is St. Crispin's Day. However, for the period between the first introduction of the Gregorian calendar on October 15th, 1582, and its introduction in Britain on September 14th, 1752, there can be considerable confusion between events in continental Western Europe and in British domains. Events in continental Western Europe are usually reported in English language histories by the Gregorian calendar. For example, the Battle of Belahim is always given as August 13th, 1704. However, confusion occurs when an event involves both. For example, William III of England arrived at Brixham in England on November 5th, Julian calendar, after he had set from the Netherlands on November 11th, Gregorian calendar, 1688. That is fucking stupid. The Battle of the Boyne in Ireland took place a few months later on July 1st, 1690, Julian calendar. The maps to July 11th, Gregorian calendar, conveniently close to the Julian date of the subsequent more decisive Battle of Aughrim on July 12th, 1691, Julian. The latter battle was commemorated annually through the 18th century on July 12th. Following the usual historical convention of commemorating events of that period within Great Britain and Ireland by mapping the Julian date directly onto modern Gregorian calendar date, as happens, for example, with Guy Fawkes Night on November 5th. The Battle of the Boyne was commemorated with smaller parades on July 1st. However, both events are combined in the late 18th century to continue to be celebrated as the 12th. That is fucking strange. Because of the differences, British writers and their correspondents often employed two dates, a practice called dual dating. Just add or delete days, months, and years to make stuff fit. Exactly. That's what they're fucking saying. They have this narrative that they want you to know, so they just, they just add stuff, or even, as changes would be made, or as they would need to change things because somebody'd be like, oh hey, this doesn't make any sense. They'd be like, well, here, let's just add this day or add like, but it's even more groove like. It's even more goofy to think like the idea of the change between Gregorian and Julian calendars being 0.008 days in in a year, 365.25 as opposed to 365.242. Like that's, how did anybody figure that out? Don't you guys doesn't that seem silly to you to think that I mean that is what is, if 0.25 is 6 hours, then what is 0.242? 365 days, 6 hours, as opposed to 365 days, 5 hours and 30 minutes or something, 45 minutes? Like, are we talking about like a 15-minute period here? Dual dating is trippy. I woke up to this stuff recently. Look into Amadeo Avantgardo and tell me that was a real dude. Oh, so you're not real. Yeah, he's a dumbass. The scary Jays will subject you to their wrath, forcing you to accept the world is spherical. They already had, and I went past it. So no. And now they hear I knew it. Almost like I command them to spawn. Right. What do you think that is? But this will just be more of that proof that like now they're gonna come troll because of this. Right? Like think about how stupid this is. You know? Nothing is coincidence when you dig deep enough. That's true. Dual dating lists, more or less automatically. Letters concerning diplomacy and international trade, thus sometimes bore both Julian and Gregorian dates to prevent confusion. For example, Sir William Boswell wrote to The Hague a letter dated 1222 December 1635. Oh, that's so fucking silly. They aren't showing their numbers either, the bots today. Still says 3 viewers only. Oh, I have 7. That's interesting. In his biography, John Dee, the Queen's Conjurer, John Dee, of course, that's what he looks like, because they all do, was an English okay. Let's see how many things this guy's know, this polymath here. So he's a mathematician, astronomer, teacher, astrologer, occultist, and alchemist. He was the court astronomer for and advisor to Elizabeth I and spent much of his time on alchemy, divination, and Hermetic philosophy. As an antiquarian, he had one of the largest libraries in England at the time. As a political advisor, he advocated the foundation of English colonies in the New World to form a British Empire, a term he is credited with coining. John Dee, born John Dee, D-E-E. That John D-E-E. Yeah, that's believable. I had to completely stop YouTube. I mean, I just, at this point, I mean, when you read this and you see how Angela, how convoluted and purposefully confusing the historical record is, why wouldn't you think it would be more, or it wouldn't this way on my feed, right? Of course they're going to do this shit. Right? They have to. This guy was born July 13th, not 13th, 1527. They know when he died, or when he was born on July 13th, 1527, and he died in 1608 or 1609. So in like a 720-day span, they're not sure when he died, but they know he was born on July 13th, 1527. Do you realize how stupid that is? I'm telling you, Barb is a fucking J piece of shit. She's a troll. She's a pedophile. It's a pedophile profile. It's another one of these J pedophile profiles. Don't waste your time on that one. Or do it. I don't care. Whatever you want to do it, go ahead. Dee eventually left Elizabeth's services and went on a quest for additional knowledge in the deeper realms of the occult and supernatural. He aligned himself with several individuals who may have been charlatans, traveled through Europe, and was accused of spying for the English crown. Upon his return to England, he found his home and library vandalized. He eventually returned to the Queen's service, but was turned away when she was succeeded by James I. He died in poverty in London, and his gravesite is on the. As always, all of the most important figures, they died in poverty, and it's the fucking stupidest shit. How come all the cities of the old world just burned down and we won't question it? We won't question it because we're not told to question it. And if you do question things, look at what comes your way. Look at how people look at the effort and energy that's put into me. Do you honestly think there are people less confident than I am who will, they're willing to put up with this kind of shit just to question things? It literally doesn't bring you any good. It only brings negative. Life is hard enough. You're not going to bring a bunch of negative to yourself. But that's why I do it, because you don't have to. But yeah, this is it's the same thing as like all of the old world was all about the occult and alchemy, and there are all these narratives of them being able to turn lead into gold, and I mean just the craziest things are supposedly documented as the other historical narratives that we're supposed to believe. But just think about how goofy this whole thing is. Early life. Now remember, this is the guy from 1570 something. Dee was born in Tower Ward, London, to Rowland Dee, a Welsh descendant, and Johanna, daughter of William Wilde. We know the parents and who the parents' were. Man, it's a good thing they kept such great records back then, right? His surname Dee is an Anglicization of the Welsh Dew, which means black, John Black. His grandfather was Bedo D.D.U. His name was D.D.U. That's how they spelled it. Of Nant-y-Gros, Pilther, Radonshire. We know who his grandfather was. John retained his connection with the locality. His father, Roland, was a mercer and gentleman courtier to Henry VIII. Dee traced descent from Roderick the Great, 9th century ruler. So how did they do that? How were they tracing their descent? It's not like they had, Ancestry.com back then. Or did they? And constructed a pedigree accordingly. His family had arrived in London with Henry Tudor's coronation as Henry VII. Dee attended Chelmsford Chantry School, now King Edward VI Grammar School. It was a chantry school from 1535 to 1542. Think about, okay, I always love when we get these narratives of these people from the 1500s. And it's supposedly this really accurate narrative, right? Of course, we don't know if these are old or new style dates because they're not saying as much. Which is weird, right? I mean, this is right at that time. But when it comes to how we went to the moon in 1969 through 72, or 76, 72, I think it's 72. The telemetry data the nuts and bolts of how we did this thing that we can't do today. We lost that. We lost that shit. Yeah, we lost all of the proof as to how to achieve the greatest achievement known to man, leaving the planet and landing on the moon, to the point where we haven't been able to do it since. We lost that really important data that is like it's the greatest achievement known to man. Yet we know about this guy, where he went to school, blah, 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 blah. I'm coming. Where he went to school, who his mother was, who his grandfather was, who his lineage was back to the 9th century, which is the 800s, right? Yeah. Like that's the shit that's supposed to make sense. I just find that fascinating, right? I find that fascinating. Why read this dumbass who's one of the people that cries because, I'm not providing evidence, and that who can never actually tell me what I'm wrong about, is mad that I'm reading the evidence that we're supposed to know. I'm reading the part we're supposed to know. That's what she said. Post the link to what you're reading. Let me just post it on here. Let me just post the link on here, and then you can go read it yourself, because I shouldn't know what I'm talking about. I shouldn't read this stuff. You would rather me talk about other stuff. I want you to talk about other stuff. Like, just think about how stupid it is. Why would anyone encourage me not to read this stuff out loud? This is the evidence. This should be the stuff that proves me wrong. Right? There shouldn't be any fear, but there's fear. Why is there fear that we're reading too much, that we're learning too much? Stupidity. This is how they operate. They need us to be stupid, which is weird, because you would think, why would they post this stuff other than it's all just fake bullshit? And they assume that you're not going to catch on. Let's see. Okay. He attended from 1535 to 15. He entered St. John's College, Cambridge, in November of 1542, age 58. We even know the month that he entered school at age 15 in 1542. Yet we don't know when he died. At 15, graduating BA in 1545 or early 1546. His abilities recognized, he became an original Fellow of Trinity College, Cambridge, on its foundation by Henry VIII in 1546. So he's 19. At 19, his abilities were recognized. What abilities are we talking about? At Trinity, he designed stage effects for a production of Aristophanes' piece. Using pulleys and mirrors, Dee was able to create the illusion of the scarabus flying up to Jupiter's palace in a mechanical contrivance, possibly based on rediscovered classical techniques. What? Dee would later claim this to be the story of the magician. What was? The discovery of classical techniques? Or the smoke and mirrors? In the late 1540s and early 1550s, I mean, it's just so silly to say those things. Yes, he traveled around Europe studying at Louvain in 1548 and Brussels and lecturing in Paris on Euclid. He studied under Gemma Furius and became friends with the cartographers Gerardus Mercator and Abraham Ortelius. So the guy that created the map. Isn't it funny how all of these famous people are all friends with each other? All of these old historians. Are we going to see the one guy, oh, I don't remember the name. Fuck. We'll see. We'll see how many more people we come across that we've read about in other narratives. Dee also met, worked, and learnt from other continental mathematicians. They were all they all were able to communicate with each other back then really easily, apparently. Such as Federico Comandino in Italy. So he's conversing with people in Italy while in France and Brussels and shit. Like, think about how ridiculous that is. How were they in communication? What's up, right, Moore? Speaking of which, have you guys seen all the reports of the blue rain falling from the sky? Texas, California, there's multiple places where the rain was this weird blue color. One guy said he drank some and it made him trip. Another guy said he drank some and it made him sick. I don't know why you would drink it. That's you have balls that I don't. Looking like antifreeze. I'm not fucking drinking it. I mean, this is the kind of shit where I don't understand, like, how this isn't interesting to you. It's one thing when you're a kid in school and you're forced to read the shit. You're forced to learned it. You know, it's this forced assimilation, if you will. Like, I can totally understand why somebody would reject that, or why, you know, kids think history is so boring and all that. But when you're reading it for your own reasons, and you're not required to regurgitate it to get your paycheck, you look at it differently. You know, it doesn't have the same, you know, I don't know, because I think about, like, being a kid in school and having issues with these kinds of things, having issues with the narrative we were given, but not caring enough. You know, it's like, why do I care? My job is to regurgitate the narrative. If I ask questions, I get in trouble. You know, school already doesn't like me. You know, I'm already this outcast and all that shit. Like, what am I going to do? Why would I make it worse for myself? And I hated it all. I thought it was stupid anyway, because none of it seemed like it worked. It just didn't match up. My wife says the same thing. Like, my wife is way smarter than me in a lot of ways. But she always said that she could never get down on history because it all seemed like lies. Yeah, there was purple as well. But the thing is, go look it up. Go Google it. Apparently, no news organizations thought it was an interesting enough story to cover. Seems strange, doesn't it? Almost like they don't want us knowing about it. And you have to think, prior to social media, we wouldn't know about it. If there's no news coverage, then we wouldn't have known. Look at how stupid the Barb character is. I went to school with a guy whose name was Prince. So that means I claim to have went to school with Prince, who is much, much older than me. Like, it's just this level of desperation. But it also shows you, like, I haven't brought up the Prince story in years. So this person has clearly been watching from the shadows. They hate me so much. Like, think about how this is how stupid they are. This is, if you open up the books on Israel, you demonize Israel stupid. This is somebody dumb enough to acknowledge that they've been stalking me for years. And admitting they're dumb enough to think that if somebody has a name, like, there's only one person that has that name. It just shows you how stupid the Jays are, and how stupid, they need us to be, because they can't argue anything else. And even now, I'm reading the narrative we're supposed to read, so why would you even argue that? What would be the problem? This same person that doesn't want me to read these things anymore. The person who's been stalking me for years and remembers everything I say doesn't want me reading stuff, doesn't want me doing what I do. Isn't that interesting? Don't all of you experience the same kind of thing? Stalkers who have been, the thing is, when you look up like stalkers, it's very rare for a stalker to follow someone for more than a year. Usually or whatever. This dumbass admitted the other day that they've been following me, stalking me for 10 years. And I'm wrong. I just point these things out to you guys because I think this is the validation, right? You're not going to get a system that comes in and says, yes, we are the official this, that, and the other, and yep, this guy is calling out our lies and we look stupid and he's right. They're never going to say anything like that. You have to look at what they're telling you, at the little pieces they give you, and put it together. Just make it make sense. That's the only thing you should do. If it makes sense, then go with it. But if it doesn't make sense, then look into it more. All of you that are here, you see something, you're a part of something, you every day you see something that happens on my feed that doesn't happen anywhere else. Yesterday, the dumb broad brought up Todd Church. Shit doesn't happen on Todd Church's feed. And he's a pedophile. He's a pedophile, he's a meth head, he's a fucking woman hater, he's a homophobe. Like, he's the worst of the worst. And yet, these dumbasses, they think they're like burning me or something. I don't know, but they're validating every claim I make. They should be opening your eyes. I see it perfectly. I see it for what it is. But I guess they're just trying to show you guys that I'm right. I don't know. I can't describe it. I don't fucking know. I just see it for what it is, and I know that if I was wrong, if they're this quick to call out stupid bullshit, if they could call out something that was wrong, they would. And the acknowledgement that they've been stalking me for all these years and they still can't find anything legitimately wrong. They have to make up shit, That should tell you something. Anyway, um, he returned to England with a major collection of mathematical and astronomical instruments. In 1552, like, think about this. Just traveling around the world from Italy back to Europe and Brussels, and this is all done by horse and carriage, I guess. Through mountainous roads and all this terrain. The roads, I don't know, do the roads even exist? Those roads exactly? Just think about what you're hearing here. In 1552, he met Girolamo Cardano in London, with whom he investigated a purported perpetual motion machine and a gem supposed to have magical properties. But we're just going to skip over that. We'll just skip over those things, the perpetual motion machine and magical gem. Interesting. Because we're just going to immediately jump to Rector at Upton upon Severn from 1553. Rector, Rector at Upton upon Severn. Upton upon Severn is a small riverside town and civil parish in the Malvern Hills district of Worcestershire, England. Worcestershire. Census recorded in 2,903 for the town. A tiny town with less than 3,000 people. And we have the record. This is crazy. Dee was offered a readership in mathematics at Oxford University in 15. Leadership in mathematics. And he was offered it, huh? Isn't it funny how, like, even to this day, they still use the same characters? Like, Epstein is a mathematician, a financier, a cultivator of art, Interesting how that works. Which he declined, citing as offensive English university's emphasis on rhetoric and grammar, which together with logic form the academic trivium over philosophy and science, the more advanced quadrivium composed of arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. So a job offer that he didn't take made the historical record. Like, it's this kind of shit that if you just look at it from like a fiction perspective, that, you just look at the stories that people write. This fits in with that same formula where they provide you with a bunch of nonsense details. Like this job offer that he didn't take directly follows the assertion that he investigated a perpetual motion machine and a gem supposed to have magical properties. We're not going to get any details about the gem or the perpetual motion machine, but we're going to get details about the job offer that he declined. So then when you later on, you go, to recall this information, or somebody questions the legitimacy of it, you can tell yourself, no, the narrative that I read had lots of details. And the details mean it's true. So this story must be true because of all the details. Like, think about this. Think about like a random job offer. We know he got the random job offer, and then why he declined it in pretty, like, you know, pretty decent detail, at least comparatively. Yet this magical gem, this perpetual motion machine, we're just not, that shit doesn't matter. That's not an important part of it. The Hall of Science. I love these old cartoons because they show you the world. You know, back when there weren't color pictures yet, you you can look to cartoons and you can see how shit looked. I mean, it's, you know, a little exaggerated or whatever, but, you know, this is how shit operated. They love to show that they were drawing what they knew. They were, you know, like, you already have the cartoon ghost, in this case Casper. You know, the ghost of a child, dead child. We Anti-gravity machine, but like, you have to see, like they put the fantastical, you know, the talking cat and mouse or whatever, in the real world as they saw it. The details are good for finding inconsistencies. To some degree, yes, but that's when it's accurate details and it's details that matter. The details are more just to trick you into thinking it's true because there's detail. You know, if somebody says they saw something or they did something and you're like, "Oh, really? Tell me the details," and they don't have any details for you, you're going to be like, "What? That's stupid. It must not be true since ouch, you know, you don't know, you don't have the details for it." But in this case, again, it's tricking your brain. It's giving you details, but it's the details about the shit that doesn't matter. Out of everything read so far, I'd love to know more about the magical gem and the perpetual motion machine. But those two things are going to be skipped over completely in favor of, you know, his position on academics, and that he thought that the academics of the blah 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 were not as good as the blah 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 blah. It's just it's so silly, and it's consistent. This is how they consistently do this. I can't tell you how many times I've read something from Wikipedia and then, you know, tried to find other sources. Because, you know, you get the crybabies that are like, "Oh, Wikipedia is only the government fucking sponsored and controlled encyclopedia of modern times. It's only that. It's not good enough." You know, they act like Wikipedia is just controlled by crazy conspiracy theorists, and it's fucking silly. No, Wikipedia is, you know, might not be true, but it's the narrative they want you to believe is true. And so when you see that this is how they operate, you know, and you see it over and over again, story after story, where, you know, we know great detail about this person being born, and then their father was a this, whose father was a that, and then their mother was this maiden whose parents were this and that, and like, but then you don't find any information on, you know, like the guy that built the Brooklyn Bridge. His narrative is that he was just he was this academic who moved to the United States and became a farmer. And after years of farming, he just decided he was going to start building fucking bridges that didn't exist. He just, you know, and you go, well, how did he get that design? Where did he come up with it? How did he get the materials? How did he build the bridge in Philadelphia at the time, the first suspension bridge of its kind, using metal for all of the stuff? He did this all by himself. in Philadelphia over the winter. And he removed the previous foundations for the bridge that were in the water. And just all this crazy bullshit. But there's no explanation as to how this shit came about. Where did he get all this fucking steel from? He just braided the steel wires and lines. They say at his own house. Well, how? And then this is even crazier because this is, the 1500s. We have tons of details about the 1500s and how he did or when he did what and where he went and who he was friends with, but not how he did anything. He was very busy with writing and perhaps, we don't know, hoped for a better position in court. That's why. Wait, so he didn't like the philosophy that they used, and he was busy with writing, and perhaps he wanted a better position, which, being offered a readership in mathematics at Oxford University isn't how you... Oh, God damn it. Go! Oh. Fucking cat puke. God damn it. Oh, in the bed. Oh, come on. You dumb fucking cat. Well, bedding's getting low. Hey, go! Go! Oh, come on. Oh, Grody. Oh. You go. She just wakes up and starts puking. That's fucking awesome. God damn it. Fuck. Oh. Gross. Let the dog lick it up. Yeah, don't have dogs in the bed, thanks. Don't have dogs in the bedroom, thanks. I couldn't have... the people that let their dogs they treat their dogs like people are the dumbest, worst of the worst people. I can't stand those people. It's a dog. It's going to die in 10, 15 years. It's a cat. They're cool and all, but come on now. I'm team people. Team Goyam. Let's see. Busy, hope for the better position. On February 17th, we know the date, 1554, Dee took Catholic orders in the midst of the Marian reaction. Marian reaction. The Second Salute of Repel, or the See of Rome Act of 1554, was an act of Parliament of England passed in the Parliament of Queen Mary I and King Philip in 1555. Followed the first salute or statute of Repel, 1950. The first statute had abolished all religious legislation passed under Edward VI, and the second statute built on it by abolishing all religious legislation passed against the papacy from 1529, the fall of Cardinal Thomas Wolsey in Henry VIII's reign. It was supported by the landed class as it allowed them to keep the monastic land which they had acquired after the dissolution of the monasteries. Here, you gotta love the Parliament of England's, what's it called? Shield or whatever. Nothing weird about that, right? It's not a Tartarian symbol, along with the other side, because Tartaria had the greenish... Oh, no, that's a bird. That's actually a bird. I thought it was the lizard thing. That's the bird. Look at all the fucking weird symbolism in there. Do you honestly think none of that has any sort of merit? None of that means anything? It's just they just like the designs and the colors. That's just fucking weird. Okay, so I would assume the bird symbolizes religion because of the halo, and the lion with the crown symbolizes some sort of the monarchy of some sort. But then there's also the knight with the crown, with the lion, with the crown on top of that. Like, it's all things on top of things, meaning this thing took that thing, this thing took that thing, this thing, you know. I wonder how many universities like Oxford were founded in the 1500s. Lots of them. Lots of them. You read about all of these. If you go and you just look into all those old schools and shit, you hear about them being founded in these years. And so then you think, okay, what does it look like? And then you go and you look and you see the pictures of it or the drawings of it. And these are magnificent, giant, you know, Greek-esque, Romanesque sculpture or structures with giant pillars, and everything's made of marble and all this other shit. And they're huge, multiple story, huge buildings. So you can't say that they were lit up by sunlight, because let's say you were in the second story and they all have these huge basements and then lower levels and lower levels and lower levels. But how did they see? How did they see inside anywhere where, I mean, once there's a doorway, once there are walls and shit, and you close that, you can't see shit. If I go look in my closet right there, I go close that door, it's pitch black in there. Daytime or not, it's pitch black in there. The little bit of light that comes through the top and the bottom of the door is nothing. So how were they able to see? The lamps? You're saying they just had this abundant supply of oil lamps, and so these guys would, go home to their thatch roof fucking, you know, garbage houses where they would sleep on beds with straw in them, and mice and bed bugs and fleas and all this shit. They lived in basically squalor. But then they would wake up, they would get on their horses and ride into town so they could be a professor at a university or something like that for 8-10 hours a day. And then they would just go back home and repeat like, it's just stupid. It really is fucking stupid. And it's stories. It's just silly stories. Oil lamps that used whale sperm oil, right? Right, because they were just proficient in whale sperm. And they were also proficient in building big giant ships that could be used to hunt whales. Like all of us. We're all like that. That's how that works. And it's WHALE. Just so we know. Just throwing that out there. Anyway. So the Catholic Bishop Edmund Bonner, likely, because we don't know, already a close friend of Dee's at this point, because of course, why wouldn't he be best buddies with Catholic Bishop Edmund Bonner? Gave him special permission to receive all the holy orders from the first tonsure of priesthood in only a single day. What? The Catholic Bishop Edmund Bonner, likely already a close friend of Dee's at this point, gave him special permission to receive all of the holy orders from first tonsure to priesthood in only a single day. So he went from nothing to a priest, a holy fucking Catholic priest, all in one day, huh? Holy orders are, in certain Christian denominations, holy orders are ordained ministries of bishop, priest, presbyter, presbyter, and deacon, and the sacrament or rite by which candidates are ordained to those orders. Churches recognizing these orders include the Catholic Church, the Eastern, except for some Lutheran. Okay. Oh, here we go. Give me some of that. Oh. Denominations and varied conceptions of holy orders in some Lutheran and Anglican churches. The traditional orders of bishop, priest, and deacon are bestowed using ordination rites contained with ordinals. The extent to which the ordination is considered sacramental in these traditions has, however, been a matter of some internal dispute. That's weird. Why would they be different? Baptists are among the denominations that do not consider ministry as being sacramental in nature and would not think of it in terms of holy orders as such. Historically, the word order, ordo in Latin, designated an established civil body or corporation with a hierarchy. An ordinito meant legal incorporation into an order. The word holy refers to the church. In context, therefore, a holy order is set apart from ministry in the church. Other positions such as Pope, Patriarch, Cardinal, Monsignor, Archbishop. Isn't the Pope considered Monsignor? Archimandrite, Archpriest, Proto-Presbyter, Hieromonk, Proto-Deacon, and Archdeacon are not sacramental orders but specialized ministries. Process and sequence. The sequence in which holy orders are received are minor orders, deacon, priest, bishop. So he skipped 3 or 2. For Catholics, it is typical in the years of seminary training that a man will be ordained to the doctrinate, to the diaconate, I don't know, diaconate, which Catholics since the Second Vatican Council sometimes call the transitional diaconate, to distinguish men bound for priesthood from permanent deacons. They are licensed to preach sermons under certain circumstances. A permanent deacon may not receive faculties to preach, to perform baptisms, and to witness Catholic marriages, but to perform no other sacraments. They assist at the Eucharist or the Mass, but are not able to consecrate the bread and wine. Oh, they can't make the bread and wine Jesus' body and blood. Normally, after 6 months or more as a transitional deacon, a man will be ordained to the priesthood. Priests are able to preach, perform baptisms, confirm with special dispensation from the ordinary. They can confirm, okay. Witness marriages, hear confessions, and give absolutions, anoint the sick, and celebrate the Eucharist or the Mass. Orthodox seminarians are typically tonsured as readers before entering the seminary and may later be subdeacons or deacons. Customs may vary between seminaries and between Orthodox jurisdictions. So tonsure is the practice of cutting or shaving some or all of the hair on the scalp as a sign of religious devotion or humility. The term originates from the Latin word tonsura, meaning clipping or shearing. Oh, that's why they have that stupid ass haircut. Gotcha. And referred to a specific practice in medieval Catholicism abandoned by papal order in 1972. Why? Because they look stupid? Tonsure, in its earliest Greek and Roman origin, was used as a sign or a signifier for slavery. Tonsure can also refer to the secular practice of shaving all or part of the scalp to show support or sympathy, or to designate mourning. Current usage more generally refers to cutting or shaving for monks, devotees, or mystics of any religion as a symbol of their renunciation of worldly fashion and esteem. Right, that's why they look stupid. Tonsure is still a traditional practice in Catholicism by specific religious orders, with papal permission, of course. It is also commonly used in Eastern Orthodox Church for newly baptized members and is frequently used for Buddhist novices, monks, and nuns. Isn't that strange? Why would two supposedly completely different things on completely different like areas of the world have such similar practices and names for things? If it's not one big one world system and it's not all a bunch of lies. The complete shaving of one's head bald or just shortening the hair exists as traditional practice in Islam after completion of the Hajj, and is also practiced by a number of Hindu religious orders. So it covers all of them. Like, wasn't it Craig that said it yesterday? No, it was somebody else that said it yesterday. Same characters, same story, or same story, same events, different script. Here's your proof. I mean, I'm constantly trying to prove myself wrong, and in doing so, end up proving myself more right than I realized. But hey, right? No big. I got 2 people watching. Why not? If I'm sitting here eating some cake and getting it all over my face and acting like a fool, I'm allowed to have thousands of viewers. But let me educate, let me read the historical record that we're supposed to know while scrutinizing it. And I got 2 people. 2 people, huh? Big sets, doesn't it? Here, let's reset and see if that helps. We'll see if that helps things. So, pedophiles, kill yourself.